on Zoom or on Facebook, and we will answer your questions at the end of the interview. Our producer today is Linda Yezel, and she will be fielding all of your questions. So hi, I'm Laura Summers, and I am so excited that today we are talking with Nancy Picard, author of Bigger, Better, Braver, Conquer Your Fears, Embrace Your Courage, and Transform Your Life. Nancy Picard is a master integrative coach through the Ford Institute for Transformational Training. She was the owner and founder of the personal training gym Tight Ends Incorporated for 16 years prior to becoming a coach. So she knows what it takes to help people achieve big goals. Nancy splits her time between Aspen, Colorado and Larkspur, California. She is the mother of 2 and grandmother of 3 and owner of her Australian Labradoodle, Bliss. She was born and raised in Buffalo, New York, and is the youngest of 3 girls. She's an enthusiastic athlete, and when she isn't working, she can be found hiking, biking, skiing, or practicing yoga. And at the age of 61, Nancy climbed Mount Kilimanjaro as part of her personal pursuit for a bigger, better, braver life. Nancy, welcome. I am so glad to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Laura. I am so excited to be here. I really am. This is doing something with Buffalo is really close to my heart. So thank you, JCC, and thank you, Laura, for doing this, and welcome everybody.
So Nancy, what does it mean to live bigger, better, braver?
Well, it's way more than just the name of my book. It's more than a mantra, which is a mantra that I use all the time. Whenever I'm afraid to do something, I just think bigger, better, braver. It has become a way of life. And it's a choice I make whenever there's fear involved to just go for my bigger, better, braver life. And the way to do that is to just put courage first and go anyway. So it's a way of life. It's recognizing that your failures are just a stepping stone to your next success. And just as importantly, it's knowing that the juice is in the journey. So it's not the outcome that's as important as the entire process to get to whatever the outcome is, because the outcome may change from what you first thought it was, but all of the learning and all of the changing is along the journey.
You know, I've had the honor of reading your book, and I learned that most of your adult life, your days revolved around taking care of your kids and your husband. And after 26 years of marriage, your husband asked you for a divorce. How did that experience help to redefine your priorities and change the way you saw yourself and experienced life?
Well, at the time, it broke me. I mean, it truly broke me. I didn't have any of the tools that I have now. I had different beliefs. I wasn't prepared. And it made me the victim in my story for a very long time. But the woman that I am today would never be here if everything had not happened just the way it did. So I really have come to learn that everything happens for a reason. Everything's for the evolution of our soul, our own growth and expansion. And when you learn to use whatever happened as lessons instead of a victim mode, you change, you can use it to grow. So I can't be sorry for anything that happened, or I wouldn't be sitting here right now with you talking about the book I wrote on Bigger, Better, Braver.
And you know, that's a really inspiring outlook, but truly what astounds me is that at the age of 61, you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Why did you do that? What did that challenge in you? And what did the adventure represent to you?
Well, I was turning 60, which seemed like such a big number for me. And I wanted to do something that was gonna mark the event. And because I was an athlete, am an athlete, I wanted to do something that was going to really be outside of my comfort zone. And the reason Kilimanjaro was also outside my comfort zone was because I was going to do it alone. You know, I was going to travel to Africa, and I wasn't going to go with a friend, because I had tried for a couple of years to get friends to go, and I really couldn't get anyone. It's not the kind of thing that somebody will just say, oh yeah, sure, I'll join you. You know, they have to really want to do it too. Nobody did. So for a couple of years, I didn't do it. And then I was turning 60, and I just thought, you know, you have to make this happen. If not now, when? So I actually joined Team in Training with Leukemia because I had done a bunch of things with them. So it makes you feel really good that you're doing something for yourself while you're doing something to help others who can't be doing what you're doing. And so that's what got me to do it. I was traveling alone. That was big for me. And I had to train and do everything I needed to do on my own to get myself to Kilimanjaro. And then I had to climb Kilimanjaro.
Wow. You know, I can't tell you that it's in me to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, but I do want to know, how can I and others, how can we free ourselves from our old ways of behaving?
Well, you free yourself by actually doing work to uncover beliefs that are in your subconscious that you're not aware of. So we all have beliefs from our childhood that we are not aware of. And those beliefs, they keep us playing small. They don't let us live our biggest life. So uncovering them to see what's holding you back, and then becoming aware of your fears that you may not even be aware of that you have. We all have fears, but if you're not aware of them, you can't really change them. You can't move past them. So when you uncover your fears and you uncover your disempowering beliefs, growth can happen. That's how it does happen. And that's why I'm a coach in this, and that's why I love this work, because people say they want a different life, but if you don't uncover what's keeping you stuck, if you're not even aware what stuck feels like, it could be so long since you've actually tapped into your own passions that you don't even know. You don't know. You just feel you're passionless. You feel like you're directionless. But if you don't feel the joy that you think you could feel, you're probably stuck, and you have these beliefs that are keeping you that way.
You know, you're talking about beliefs, and in Bigger, Better, Braver, I read about shadow beliefs. Can you tell me more about what shadow beliefs are and how they hold us back from living our best life?
Yeah, so shadow beliefs are what I was just talking about. Under the age of 10, something happens, an event happens in our life, and we give it a meaning. We're not emotionally intelligent enough or mature enough to figure out what happened, but because we're meaning-making machines, our bodies want to make meaning out of everything. We give it a meaning. In a second, we make a meaning about it, but then that meaning gets buried in our subconscious. We're not even aware we did it, but it totally takes over our operating system without even knowing we have it. It defines our life for us. It tells us what we can and cannot do because of this belief. So I'll give you an example from my own life that I didn't know I had until I was in my 50s. But in my 50s, I got into a car accident, and I wasn't badly hurt, but I was I was very shaken up. And I did a session with my coach at the time, and she took me into my meditation garden. She asked me to just, get quiet, and that there was a beautiful forest with all my sub-personalities, all the little Nancy Picards, the younger me, my younger selves were in that garden and in that forest. And I should walk around until I saw something that got my attention, which is what I did. And all of a sudden I saw me at 5 years old, the little girl in her party dress that had been playing with a lighter, and I was sitting at my mother's piano, and the keys in my dress went up in flames and I went up in flames and I almost died that day. Now, most of my burns were all first and second degree burns. And so I came home, I didn't even get punished because my parents were so happy I was not, I was alive. So I didn't give it a lot of meaning. That passed in my life. I didn't think about it again. And here I am at 50 years old, the next time I almost died. And that little girl was inside me waiting to tell me something. So my coach said, well, what does she want you to know? And I waited, and the little girl wanted me to know I wasn't safe alone. Makes perfect sense for a 5-year-old. She was right. She wasn't safe alone. So our shadow beliefs are made to keep us safe. And it did keep me safe. But eventually you grow up and that very belief becomes what you're confined in. So if I wasn't safe alone, I always had to have a partner in my life. I always had to be with friends. I wasn't happy traveling alone. I couldn't even go to a restaurant by myself. And when I uncovered that belief and brought it from my unconscious to my conscious mind, I could take that disempowering belief and now give it a new meaning, a meaning that was empowering for me. So my new belief was, I am safe and competent and happy alone. I mean, it turned on a dime for me. Changed my whole life.
Thanks for sharing that story. You also talk in the book about unconscious commitments. So you did such a great job telling us about shadow beliefs. Do you mind sharing some more about unconscious commitments and how they prevent us from achieving happiness and getting what we want out of our lives or what we say we want?
Sure, I'd love to. So it's very similar to a shadow belief. Many times they're born at the exact same time, but not always. But in this case, I made a promise to myself in that instant to never be alone. That was my unconscious commitment. I wasn't safe alone. I will never be alone. So I went through my whole life making sure I was never alone. I have a ton of friends. I've had a partner in my life since I was 13. And the moment I didn't, that belief, that commitment to myself made me fix that picture immediately. So with my clients, unconscious beliefs sound like this. This is some examples. I'll stay safe. I'll stay quiet so I can stay safe. Or I'll play small so I can stay safe. Or I'll control everything so I can be safe. Or I'll stay quiet so I don't get hurt. Or I won't share my feelings so I won't get laughed at. Or I won't speak out loud so I won't get laughed at. So let's say a child, 5 years old, 7 years old, stands up in a class and he stutters and everybody in the class laughs at him. In an instant, he makes a belief. I'm broken. I'm not good enough. I'll never fit in. And then he makes an unconscious commitment to himself. I'll stay quiet so nobody will know. Or he'll think I'm stupid. And then he'll say, I'm not going to do anything to show that I'm stupid. So they play small. And so back to your question about how you play small, this is why we play small, because of all these disempowering promises that we make to ourselves.
So you talk about playing small, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we get in the habit of playing small sometimes. So how do we get placed in that box? But more importantly, how do we break free of it?
We get placed in that box because as children, our inner critic wants to keep us safe. And so it learns a lot of things. Oh, I got yelled at when I was talking really loud in a restaurant, or when I went potty in the restaurant, or I screamed during, services. So little by little you learn, oh, that's not good for me to do. Oh, I shouldn't be that. Oh, that's not good. Your inner critic is there to make you safe. But as an adult, you need to say, like, shut the hell up already to that inner critic. You have to recognize you're safe and you can live bigger. So the way to get out of that box is to uncover the same beliefs so you can figure out why you're in the box. And then you also have to get quiet enough to really see what it is your heart wants for you, because we're getting ruled by our head, what our ego wants for us. And that ego is being served by all of those beliefs, but our heart doesn't. Our soul knows what we should be doing. And if we can get quiet enough to quiet that monkey brain to see what's inside, we can actually figure out what we really want, not what our parents or our children or our grown children or our partner wants for us, but what would make our own soul dance? Because that's what we're missing.
So it's a great way for us to really get to know ourselves a lot better, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the subtitle of your book is Conquer Your Fears, Embrace Your Courage, and Transform Your Life. What is the nature of fear? And how do we come to terms with it so that we can cultivate fear as a driving force for change?
Well, we all have fears. And
I agree with that.
right? And the fears never go away, but we can actually make friends with them. We can have compassion for them, but then we have to take them by the hand with faith that the universe has our back and that everything's going to work out exactly as it should. And we walk hand in hand, faith and fear, to do what it is we want to do. And a lot of those fears that we have, they're not based in an adult reality. So again, when you can see where that fear comes from, and then actually do the work around it, well, what's the worst case scenario? If my fear comes true, what's the worst case scenario? And then if that worst case scenario happens, what will I do? And what's the percentage? What's the likelihood that that worst case scenario will even happen? So it's so low. I mean, the reality is, number one, when you do that exercise, you have a plan. You can figure out what you're going to do. Okay, if I go bankrupt, I'll do this. I won't really be homeless. I have people I can ask for help. I can start a fund me crowd. There's a lot of things that you can do. If you do this and you lose your relationship and your fear is you'll never find another one, well, you probably will find another one. And if you don't find another one, what will happen? Well, you'll learn to be happy alone. So usually if you just work on your fears and you do that exercise, you're going to see that they're really not founded. All of the angst that you put into the fear could be used creatively to move past that fear.
So what I'm hearing is that fear often has a tendency to drive most of us towards being a reactor, right?
Yeah.
So I want you to share with us why it's important to become more of a conscious observer than it is to be a reactor in our lives.
So I would say, Laura, out of everything I've learned, this has been the greatest gift. And this has probably changed me the most. Because as a reactor, you're just doing your gut feeling. And usually that reaction comes from the wounded child. So it's a childish reaction. It's not in your best interest to just react. When you become the observer, you're the one that is seeing the person who just had the event. You're the one that can see the person who's crying. You're the one that can see the person who's having those feelings. It removes you. You know, when you were a little kid, did you ever play that game where you put one hand on top of the other?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I feel like here's the event, but here's all of the drama and the feelings and the fear and the sadness that we put on it. Well, when you are the observer, you're back at just the event. You're over here, this person over here who's observing, this person gets to question it. Why am I reacting? Like, what just got triggered? What wound of mine did that person just hit that I want to actually react to? How could I see this differently? What could I do differently? As the observer, you get to think all of these things through, and then you respond. So Laura, both of us, I want you to tell them about our equation, because I know we both talk about this all the time, and I need to get a sip of water, so you tell the story.
Okay, so it's a difference between being a reactor and being a responder. When you're responding, you are taking responsibility. So my favorite equation, and one that Nancy and I both use, is E plus R equals O. What does that mean? E is the event plus your response or your reaction is what equals the outcome. So the event is typically out of your control. So many things are out of our control. Whatever the event is, how we respond to that event or how we react to that event is what creates our outcome. So for instance, right now we are all in this time of COVID. That's the event. The event is something that we don't have control over. How we respond or react to it is we can respond in a way of deciding to wear masks when we go into public, staying away from people, social distancing, and we can create an outcome where we maybe feel a little bit more secure in what's happening. Or we can react by saying, I'm not going to let anyone control me. I'm going to go to the beach and hang out today, possibly infecting someone else or becoming infected, which would be the outcome. So I love that being a conscious observer, we can then be the responder rather than the reactor. Yes?
Yes. And there's a lot of this, there's a lot of reacting going on, which we'll get into later around COVID, right? There's so much reacting.
Well, before we get to COVID and we talk about the reactions that are going on around that with all of us on a global level these days, I want to talk with you about courage mindset. How can someone develop a courage mindset?
I think the biggest problem that happens is that, number one, you don't know what it is you want to do. But once you figure that out, it seems like climbing Kilimanjaro. It's so big. And so nobody can do it. Nobody can move. Nobody knows how to step in. There's no momentum to even get going. So what I like people to do is chunk it down into very small, sizable action steps that they can learn to promise themselves that they're going to follow through, because that's what happens. We all make promises to ourselves. We make commitments to ourselves, and we're so used to not following through that, oh, okay, I'll start that diet again tomorrow. Oh, okay, I didn't get that work done. I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, I have to pay my taxes. That's okay. I'll do it tomorrow. On and on and on. But when you chunk these down to very small, sizable action steps, and then you become accountable, you follow through, which actually leads to more self-love and self-trust, which is what this is all about. So a courage mindset is being bigger, better, braver, and following through day by day by day, always knowing that you are responsible. Nobody else is responsible. You are responsible for every choice you make. And if every choice you make does not stay in alignment with where you want to go, you're never going to get there. So it's all built in. The courage mindset is built in to step-by-step action steps, staying accountable, following through, looking for what you're doing right instead of what you're doing wrong, so that you feel better about yourself. And that big mountain is not so big.
Well, I've been guilty of a few of those things that you named off.
I knew you'd laugh when I named one of those.
Yeah, I've experienced that myself. We'll save that subject for another day. But I read in your book that you suggest that people find acceptance and surrender to what is. And that kind of sounds a little counterintuitive to building a bigger, better, braver life. So how do you reconcile these concepts? And should we welcome challenges and life lessons?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, okay. Yes.
Sometimes I'm like, oh, are there 3 questions here?
Yes,
So,
yes, there are. Sorry, I get a
okay.
little carried away.
So the first question was about acceptance and surrender, right?
Right, yeah, you
All right.
suggest that people find acceptance and surrender to what is.
Yeah, definitely. So when I was first talking before about being stuck and being in resistance and not knowing what that feels like, it's being in resistance to what is. And if you like squeeze everything in your body really tight, 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 and then you let it all go, that's the difference between resistance and surrender or acceptance. And so that's why it's not counterintuitive. You have to stop resisting what is and just accept that this is where I am, whether you want to be there or not. This is my reality. I'm starting from here and I accept it. I stop fighting it. This is what I am. This is where I am. This is day one. And once you surrender to what is exactly as it is without wishing it was different, you can relax. It's like, you know how the salmon go upstream and they're fighting going upstream? Well, picture all of a sudden you're like floating downstream. The ease that comes with floating downstream. It's night and day. And from that place of acceptance and surrender, you can use all of the energy that you used to resist to now be creative, to now think outside the box, to now learn ways to move forward. So this is huge with COVID. Everyone is so busy fighting what is that they and feeling badly about what they've given up, what, you know, the weddings, the work, the money. I mean, there's so many huge, I can't even, there's so much loss, I can't even go into it. But come back from the worst case scenarios, people who aren't on the front lines and aren't ill are so busy being in resistance to what is that they're not looking outside the box. They're not seeing all of the amazing things that the gifts that are here right now. And when you're in resistance, you don't see the gifts. You can't be creative and you can't move forward. You're in the past and you're a victim of your past.
Right, and they're reacting instead of responding to the event that's going on. Going back to E plus R equals O. You know, when you were just talking about surrender and acceptance, I actually felt like I had a big sigh go through my body. It's almost as if you gave me permission to go to a starting point and relax in that starting point to go whatever direction my life needs to go.
Exactly. And, you know, we talk about the roller coaster of emotions that happened during COVID. And I can wake up one day and the littlest thing can take me off my game because your stress level, even if you're not really stressed by this, it's there. And so you see how easily you get knocked off your game during this time period. And yet, when I can just remind myself to accept what is, okay, so you might not be able to do a live book event, but you can do 1 million book events like this. There's so many ways to take it back and be creative and see what the gifts are. Again, I keep going back to this, looking at what's right, but you have to keep bringing yourself back to acceptance. So it's not a one and done. It's a muscle that has to be exercised over and over again. But when you do it, you go from this to this. That's simple.
Yeah, I felt that. I felt that big sigh, that big release. So I need to ask you, I've been noticing that beautiful painting behind you of elephants.
Yeah.
It's really stunning. Did you by chance get that when you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro?
There were artists at the bottom of the mountain, like where you first go and you register and you get, something to eat. And they have all these artists on the ground, just painting in stalls all around you. And I bought it and they rolled it up and I brought it back here. I can't tell you how inexpensively this was until I actually brought it back home. And it's so big that it cost me an arm and a leg to get it framed. But I thought I had done this like amazing, great deal, but I love it. I love it.
It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
So you got that painting when you came down from the mountain and the artisans were there at the base of the mountain. After buying that painting, what was the first thing that you did after you came down off of that mountain?
Well, that's an interesting story because I had read a book by this like 20-something girl who had climbed Kilimanjaro. And when I'm reading the book and she says when she first got off the mountain, she took off all her clothes and looked in the mirror and she was so emaciated. She didn't recognize herself. She looked like an 18-year-old.
Oh my God.
So that's the first thing I did. And I took off all my clothes and I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, oh my God, what happened to my body? This 61-year-old body who'd been up and down so much altitude, I was unrecognizable, but in the worst kinds of ways. And when I think about it now, the beauty of that story is that I had gone up Kilimanjaro as one person and had the most spiritual awakening of my life. I felt like I could do anything. I didn't need anybody to help me. Everything was, I could do and be everything. I could be bigger, better, braver. And if I could do this by myself at 61, I could do anything. So I had this amazing, I was crying when I saw the flags at the top and I loved myself so much. And then I'm knocked down 5 minutes. And just like women can do, I could find something to beat myself up about. So.
Well, that sounds like it brings you into a place of humanity, doesn't it?
It does. It
Because
does.
I can definitely associate with the standing in front of the mirror and wondering what the heck happened.
I know. It's really unreal.
Well, hey, I wanted to ask Linda, let's get to some viewer questions and see if anybody has chimed in. Linda is, as I mentioned earlier, Linda Yazel is our producer today, and she's been fielding questions that are coming up. Linda, do our viewers or listeners have any questions for Nancy?
Nothing so far.
Okay.
And I can't see the Facebook, so I'm just going to assume that.
Yeah, I'm looking in both
Okay.
places.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions, this would be the time. And then if not, Laura, we can just finish up and
You've been
Yeah.
covering this really well. I love the depth that you got into with so many of the subjects. And like I said, I personally feel the acceptance and surrender inside of my own body. So Nancy, can you please tell people how they can, if they have questions later, how can they reach out to you? How can they contact you?
yeah, I want to, but let's just finish up a little bit more on COVID for a moment.
Okay.
Because I feel like people need to recognize that all emotions are good emotions to have. Nothing's there to make you wrong. And you need to look at those emotions and figure out what they're there to tell you. So be prepared through COVID, through so much time being in, through fears around money and health and all the righteous positions that come up when you see somebody that isn't wearing a mask or is not doing, we all do what we do, and yet we have righteous positions, which is like an opinion on steroids around anybody who's not doing the things that we're doing. If there are 10 things, maybe we do 8, and then the 2, we don't complain about the 2 that we don't do. But when we see anybody that's not doing the 8 that we do, we get all up about it. So we have to appreciate that everybody's doing the best they can and that all of your emotions are okay. And for my advice for all of you is to look for what's right instead of what's wrong with what's going on right now. How can you take maybe your big goals that you wanted aren't going to look the same, but don't use COVID as an excuse to not keep living a bigger, better, braver life. Did you want to say something, Linda?
There's a question that just came in.
Okay, so let me just finish this and then you can ask me.
Okay.
So don't use this as an excuse. Get creative and find ways to live outside the box and what you can still do. So there's lots of ways to do little steps that are not going to be what you thought you were going to do, but they're going to bring you someplace, and it might be even better, more creative than you ever imagined. You just have to look outside the box. Okay, Linda, what was the question?
Okay, so there's two. The first one's from Sharon.
Okay.
And she's asking, what questions do you have or suggestions do you have for speaking with friends who focus on fear and their own helplessness?
That's a great question. Thank you. So we all have to set boundaries around what makes us comfortable. I have said to people, I know there's a lot of information out there. I really appreciate that you want to share it, but I need to take care of myself, and the way I need to take care of myself is not to hear this. So could we just agree that we won't talk about it with each other? You have to set boundaries around the energy vampires that are out there. And you can say to your friend, I'm trying to stay healthy and I'm trying to stay positive. And so I need to protect my feelings about this. I need to protect my emotions of up and down. So just for now, could you not share that information with me? And could you save that for somebody else? Don't make them wrong. Take it on yourself. This is about you. I feel this way. So could you please, do you think you could respect doing this for me right now?
So Sharon says, thank you.
You're welcome.
And the second question's from Katie. And she said, can this way of thinking work for people at any age? And how do we instill this in kids so they can start doing it now?
Oh, that's so funny, Katie. Thank you for asking, because I want to do a book on, I want to be bigger, better, braver too. I have 4 and 5-year-old grandchildren who call me telling me, Nana, I did this today. I was bigger, better, braver. So it's a beautiful thing to instill in your children. Teach them that mantra every time they do something that's bigger, better, braver. Applaud them. Let them see it. And I think a problem that we all have as parents, because I'm also a parenting coach, is we need to let our children fail and fail often. And that is not something we do. But that is the only way they build resilience. They need to know it's okay to fail so that it's okay to try things over and over and over again. And it's not, again, teach them that the success is the journey. It's not the outcome. Every little step, whether you fail or you don't, is going to lead you someplace else that sitting on the couch will never lead you. So that's the part about children.
I hope you're going to get that children's book written soon, because I have little grandchildren too, and I can't wait for them to read it.
I hope I can too, but this first book has been such a huge project that I don't know. We'll see. I might take a breath. And then the other thing is, yes, of course you can do this with any age. And I mean, just yesterday, my mother, who's 93, was having trouble walking. And for her to get stronger, she has to make herself get out of the chair and do some of the things herself instead of letting her aides do it for her. And she doesn't want to because it's hard. She's 93. And I'm like, Mom, we do hard things. You can do hard things. And so her bigger, better, braver looks very differently. We all lost my dad about 7 or 8 months ago. And so my mom having to reinvent her life and go on without my dad, that's my mom at 93, living bigger, better, braver. So Katie, did I answer your question? Okay, thanks. Any other questions?
Nothing here.
Okay, great. So the way that you can, there's a few things you can do. My book is on pre-order. And if you go to my website, which is nancypicardlifecoach.com, you can pre-order the book. You can also just go to Amazon or Barnes and Nobles. But
Hey, Nancy, do you have a copy of the book right there in front of
I
you? Can
do.
you show everyone?
here's my book.
Yes.
And this is really the advanced reading copy that says here. So, but it looks the same. That's my name, Nancy Picard. Just put it together, nancypicardlifecoach.com. On the home page of my website is where you can order the book. But at the bottom of that page is a little form for you to fill out with the customer number that you got when you ordered the book, or even you can just put the date that you ordered the book and we'll find it. And when the book does come out, your gift for pre-ordering is the reader's guide that will be a download, a PDF download that comes with all kinds of questions and activities and exercises to dig deeper or to use in a book club, things that you can do, ideas. And a lot of it is information that you may or may not have gotten today, but it just takes you that much deeper.
Well, thank you,
And
Nancy.
that's basically it. I have a course coming out also, a Bigger, Better, Braver group online course. So you can coach with me privately, or you could join my group course.
That's excellent. And I do have one more question about this. When does the book actually get released? I know we can pre-order it, but when will we get the book?
July 14th.
July 14th.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. July 14th. I'm looking forward to receiving my copy.
I'm looking forward to you receiving it too.
And just so you know, I have pre-ordered my copy. So I'm really looking forward to this. I want to thank everyone for being here today. Thank you, Nancy Picard. May we all learn to live a bigger, better, braver life.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. And thank you so much for joining. And Katie, thank you for getting the whole JCC behind this. I loved it. And I look forward to doing something live in Buffalo whenever that day is that we're allowed to do that. So everybody stay healthy, stay safe. Bye.